For trend number 2, we go deep into one of my favorite subjects, marketing. And our trend that we have identified is something we're calling blocked you. Tracking and targeting customers is about to get a lot harder. And we have a guest who is at the forefront of marketing, where it's been and where it's going. Jamie Gutfreund is strategic advisor at Super Awesome, was chief experience officer at Hasbro, CMO for Wunderman Thompson and Deep Focus, and spent time at Microsoft. She's also my mentor and someone I go to when it comes to understanding where marketing is going. Jamie, welcome to the program.
Oh, I'm so honored. You didn't tell me that. I'm thrilled. Well, you're my mentor.
So we have this mutual
We have a
agreement.
mentor society.
I
Yes.
love it. I love hearing
it.
that.
Thank you.
Hey, so question on, where things are moving in this upcoming decade, tracking, targeting. How difficult is it going to be because of the regulation that's out there, the California Consumer Protection Act, as well as GDPR?
I don't think it's going to be difficult in the way that most people are terrified, because there are a lot of ways to understand it. What I think is challenging is, and we were talking about this before, there's a huge gap in what people understand and the legislation. That's the part that's really pretty challenging. How do you talk to kids? What kind of tracking information is allowed? What privacy requirements are going forward? It's the Wild West, and I think that that's where people are confused.
Yeah, it's interesting. On the area of, kids in the internet, Aya, you had a question for Jamie on this one.
Yes, actually, let's talk about something that nobody talks really about it. You mentioned kids and the internet. So what are your thoughts? I mean, all of these new platforms are emerging, TikTok and Facebook and all of the other social media. How do you think the new trend will impact the kids and their ability to access internet?
I think if you go back into the dark days of when the internet was first launching, back in the Microsoft days, we had 14.4 dial-up, for those of you who remember. The internet was not created for anybody specifically. It just kind of happened, and for advertisers or for kids in particular. So nobody thought about kids, especially when the internet was sort of first around. So fast forward, here we are today, kids are watching less TV. They're watching more internet. Anybody who has a kid is dying because their kid's on YouTube all the time, and that's just the way it is.
Oh, yeah. Too much, maybe.
Or just they don't understand how to guide it. So then these days, 40% of the entire user audience for the internet is kids. So it's an important audience, as well as if you see what's happening with kids, you see what's happening with everyone else. They always predict the future. So for those of you who are out there thinking, I don't care about kids, I sell cars, or I'm selling insurance, it does matter, because where they go, everyone goes.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because if you think about how targeting works, they don't allow targeting to people under 13 because of different laws. And now that's playing out more into you can't target people regardless of what age they are, based on, again, regulation or government rules on, hey, you can't just pinpoint an ad toward these people. You have to allow that ad to be seen by everyone who wants to apply to that job. So are you saying that we should pay more attention to this area of youth, just so that we know where maybe the next 10 years might be going in terms of regulation?
Well, I think it's pretty amazing that governments were able to find a common ground and protect kids, thank goodness. And so it's actually not just 13 and under, it's 16 and under is where the new California Privacy Act and GDPR have. So it's probably safer for most brands to consider that they have to protect kids 16 and under. That's a lot of content. And I think that going forward, adults can see that this is possible. They may not know, we may not have a clear path on how to make it work, but if you can protect kids, why can't you protect an adult?
Yeah.
And I think that's where you're going to start to see a lot in contextual advertising, because it is possible. You don't have to know exactly who the person is to be able to add value. And I think that speaks to the fact that content is going to have to really be strong. This is the age of content, and contextual advertising, which is really interest-based, is going to be really leading the way in the next few years.
Now,
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious about how those kids will be impacted 10 years down the road. So when they're 26, will they be bombarded all of a sudden by ads, and now they have to change their behavior? Or psychologically speaking, how do you think that will kind of unfold?
I think kids are going to grow up much more savvy consumers because privacy is a conversation we all have. But funny enough, most people, especially kids, are willing to give up an enormous amount of data.
Oh, yeah.
But I think what's going to happen is the requirement for what you get back for giving up that information is going to be much more of an intrinsic sort of a quid pro quo. How might we say that these days? Because if I'm going to give you my data, I actually think, and what we're seeing in a lot of the research is that people don't necessarily mind if you get value.
Yeah.
What the controversy is, and this is why YouTube had this huge fine, was because kids were being tracked without parental consent.
Yep.
Parents can consent. And there's a lot of issues, for example, in school, kids are using technology and they're being tracked. That's a gray area. But if a kid or a child is engaging with a brand and it's value add and the parents have agreed, then that's okay. We have a lot of clients. It's Super Awesome is an amazing company that's making the internet safe for kids. And there are really fantastic ways that brands can interact with kids in a safe way, but parents have to be consenting. Or you have to have zero data.
What you just shared there took me back when Facebook was first launched in 2004. I remember I was in college and nobody knew about the privacy. That was not even a thing. And everybody posted everything in your digital footprint. Nobody knew that it was forever. So it was just such a new, insane trend. But now it's all going back into just contracting.
I mean, I hear people talking, brands and marketers just are panicked because of cookies, but let's face it, cookies are 25 years old.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty confident with all the smart people out there around the world, we'll find something to replace cookies. It's just, cookies are technically kind of lazy, but you're right, we didn't know. We don't know what we don't know now, as a matter of fact. So I also remember when Facebook first started, people were lying about their age. So you've got a lot of people out there it says that they're 26, but they're really much younger because they said that they were old enough. And I think that's another thing we're going to start to see is that the age gating has been all about the site saying to the kid, hey, do you verify that you're 13 and over? And everyone just clicks a box and says, yeah, I am. Going down the road, it may be the responsibility of the publishers to determine that, yes, in fact, like a driver's license or cigarettes or alcohol, that I am, in fact, 13 or 16.
I see that totally happening because right now it is just you click a box, you enter, you're able to do it. But then I could see almost, maybe I'm wrong here, someone suing. Lawsuits always change everything, where someone says, I didn't allow my child to go on there, but they hacked their way in. I'm now suing you because you didn't put up enough of a restriction here to get into this ecosystem, which then puts the onus back on these publishers to say, all right, yeah, we have to figure out ID verification.
That's all happening. All these conversations are happening. I think the good news is we can't lose track of it. It's actually good for kids. And this is one of those things that should happen. But kids having access to great content is also important. So how do you get around the idea that kids that have access to subscription only versus video on demand, if you have SVOD versus AVOD, does that mean that kids will not see content unless it's advertising driven? Or are they going to see content that they can only afford if it's streaming, if it's not subscriber based? It's going to be a really interesting time for content creators and publishers. And I think the content creators who've done a really good job in the last few years of amassing these massive audiences, they're going to figure out a way to, whether it's to go to different platforms, you're going to see new platforms arising, not just YouTube. And where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah. That leads to my final question and this term you and I were talking about, change pornography.
Yeah.
A shout out to Mark Ritson, who actually came up with the term. What does that mean, and how does that apply in this sort of blocked you ecosystem?
I love that phrase. I saw that, and we had a good chuckle about it. Big shout out to Mark Ritson. I think in terms of what we're seeing now with all the unicorns, and you guys talked about this in your report, it's not enough to have a great idea and to build scale and top-line revenue. There's this thing called profitability. And so all of these newfangled marketing concepts that everyone got excited about, at the end of the day, sometimes it just really comes back to the fundamentals. Do you know your audience? Do you have a superior product? It's the 4 Ps, right? Let's all go back to the basics. Yeah. And the idea of change pornography is the idea that just because I can talk about programmatic to the nth degree, and let's see. I can find a guy that lives in Seattle that works for a high-tech company that is balding, has a book. I can micro-target you.
You're referring to me.
Oh, well, just a little bit.
Goodness, oh.
That's Jeff.
But so I can micro-target you. Is that efficient? Does that mean anything? Or were you going to buy that product anyway?
That's right. Yeah.
And that's part of the thing. I mean, just because I can doesn't mean I should. And I think that the idea of change pornography is fascinating because people get very excited about bright, shiny objects. Where I think we're going to is just like everything. The pendulum swung from one end to another, and now we're starting to see things coming back in the middle. And like, if you look at like a Casper, for example, I think the mattress industry is such a microcosm for marketing in general.
Yeah.
They have stores, they have ads on TV. Those are not necessarily newfangled ideas. Those are basics.
Oh, geez. Our producer, Jonathan, ask him when you get off set about what it's like to buy a mattress. He can't escape the ads now, even though he bought one a while ago.
Exactly. Retargeting. Is it effective?
Yeah.
Is it effective? I don't know. Maybe not. As opposed to if you go to a website and it says, I can't sleep.
Yes.
That's my website. The I can't sleep website. Yeah, that's probably a good place to put your mattress ads.
Yeah. Hey, well, wise words from you. Always great to see you. Thanks for joining us here on the program.
Great to be here.
Jamie Gutfreund here with us on 2020 Vision.